Today marks the last Sunday of our online ministry, which our parishioners have experienced for the last 6 months. It has been times of uncertainty and constant change as we were trying to adapt, yet continue the ministry which God has made us stewards of. Positive steps are being made in overcoming the pandemic, especially here in South Africa. Therefore, we are looking forward to welcoming people back here to St. George's from the first Sunday in October, when these pews around me will again be filled with people to a certain capacity and social distancing in place. And as it marks a change in our manner of worship, it brings me back to a Christ-centered understanding of the relevancy of the good news of Jesus Christ needed in the world. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Philippians, is writing whilst he himself is in prison, in a place of confinement. But he's writing with a certain sense of excitement and a positive spirit, because he's saying that whilst I may be bound to chains, the Word of God, the good news of Jesus Christ, can never be contained, confined, and bound. And it is spreading all over the world because it is God Himself at work. And it is our joy to complete that the joy and the comfort of participating in the mission of God. It is a joy because we know that Paul's very life and the life of the church exemplifies that there's a higher level of existence despite the circumstances that we face. And this is not being blindsided or naive. This is coming to a full understanding of salvation, liberty, and truth. It also marks, interestingly, a particular relationship that we have with power and the state. Paul is writing from a place of being imprisoned by the state for his faith and for the good news of Jesus Christ. And how interestingly, as I say, that we have been in the last 6 months placing a particular emphasis on our relationship to power and the state. The restrictions that have been placed on our lives, the confinement and controls by which our privileges were limited. In a country like South Africa, we are indeed privileged to have so many rights, to be offered such freedoms. And of course, these issues would come to the fore because the limitations that is being placed on us, whilst we are constitutionally protected. And we look to the state as a benevolent actor, and that the restrictions put in place is indeed for our safeguarding and well-being. But where does the balance lie? Where does our role in offering power to the state makes us participators in how this pandemic is being overcome and how suffering can be alleviated? And that is the metaphysical question, indeed, that Paul is posing to the church in saying that there is restrictions in place. There is going to be confinement on your lives to some extent. But there is a way of exercising power, which you all have, that transcends even the role of the state. And he's mentioning a few things. He's mentioning those eternal emotions, eternal ways of being in a place where we can become enablers. Because this is a question that's being addressed and asked throughout the millennia. The Pharisees come to Jesus in Matthew's Gospel in the 21st chapter, when he's seeing that he is healing people and offering them the good news. And they're asking him, so by whose authority are you doing these things? By whose authority does the good news advance? Understanding exactly their ploy and how they want to exert their own power and control over the religious ideas of the time. Jesus is asking them and responding with a question of his own, in saying and asking, so by whose authority did John the Baptist minister? And only then will I answer your question. Confiding to themselves, the Pharisees realized, but if they say by God, the people would accuse them of not believing John the Baptist. If they say by himself, they would be very upset with them because they perceive John to be a true prophet. And therefore, we get a very real glimpse into where power and authority lies. It lies in to the protection of people and the power that they extend and the power that they give to others to exert rule. But it goes deep into our human understanding and psyche. Because Jesus, of course, is doing these miracles by the authority of God in order to establish God's kingdom on earth. And that was his message. But even our relationship to God is a complex one, as we see in Exodus chapter 17. When Moses is leading people through the desert, in fact, it's God leading them through the desert. And God brings them to a place of a desert place where there is no water. And the people start complaining and grumbling. And to the point where they're prepared to stone Moses because they're realizing they may face death by thirst. And they're saying to Moses, but why have you led us to this place? And Moses gets upset because he realizes, but he's not doing it out of his own authority, but by God leading them. And God is saying, but why do you test me? And it seems like an ironic statement, because God is indeed perhaps testing them by leading to this place of desert dryness. And the people was at the point of mutiny, prepared to stone Moses. And Moses, by the instruction of God, stands before a rock and hits it with the staff God has given him. And water gushes out from this rock, giving water, quenching the thirst of the nation. But it seems ironic because it feels as though God is submitting to the demands of the people. And it raises a really important question, because why would God submit if God is God? If God is all reigning? Who is the one who is leading the higher level of existence right there? In fact, it goes even into the New Testament even further. Because in Philippians, as Paul is writing and trying to unpack this relationship of state power and his encouragement and his higher level of existence, he's saying, but look at the example of Christ. Christ became this kenotic vessel. He was God, but chose not to hold on to power, but became a slave in order so that he can become the liberator of the world. He became like a vessel poured out, emptied of himself, which is the kenosis, the kenotic practice, so that others can be watered, others can be quenched of their thirst. And Jesus is emptying himself again, like God is emptying himself in the desert, submitting to the needs of the world. And in that you find the strangeness of how power works in God's economy. Because Jesus gave everything away, because he emptied himself, he was then elevated to the right hand of God the Father and given a name above all other names, to which every knee will bow and every tongue confess that he is Lord. This is a certain level of supremacy that power can exert, but it stems from this place of kenosis, of emptying. And it's a relationship that we need to become aware of. That how do we project and give control to the state, to others, to communities, and how do we become the recipients of a reigning body over us? And here we ask the questions, but what is true power, therefore? And the Apostle Paul says there are four things. Four things by which you can exercise power. Because there is power that we can exercise as individuals and as collective bodies. There are certain primal freedoms that no one can take away from you. Freedoms of thoughts, freedom to dream, freedoms to live a life with higher expectations. And although there are insidious forces that would even suppress those freedoms, that of mental well-being, as we may have experienced the last 6 months, the good news is what the Apostle Paul is trying to get across. That whilst he's in confinement, he's saying there's one thing that you optimally can exercise control of. That is of being an encourager. To be an encouragement and to participate in encouragement is to impart courage, is to be the enablers in this world, in this society, to be the motivators, to choose, to be positive, and to offer freedom and joy to others, even despite our personal circumstances. And that is a very real exercise of power that we have. The second way is he says that we need to offer comfort. Again, in the world of stress and the desire when people just want to come into a place of meaningfulness, the rest of meaningfulness, the rest of meaningfulness of a life from meaninglessness, we can have power by offering comfort. The third thing the apostle is saying is that there's power in participating. It's not just good enough to be part of an institution, to have membership. You have to be a participant, because in that you are really coming to the grips of the power that you have. And then lastly, he says, complete my joy in this, in being single-mindedness in the calling and the task which is placed on us as the church. The power that is given to us is the completion of that joy. Those four things, I believe, set the example of what it means to become these kenotic vessels of true power and freedom. So that as we empty ourselves, when we've got nothing more to prove, when our power is not dependent on others, but it is intrinsic to who we are, then we can offer power to others, not just the power that's been projected onto us. And therefore, as we are marking the change in season and in the change in the way we are worshipping, remember these four things, these four power tools of the community of Jesus Christ, the community of the resurrected, that despite our circumstances, we are called to be encouragers, to offer comfort, to be participators, and to complete the joy, and to be single-minded in this. As we get ready to again worship together, this is the attitude that Christ expects of us. That you and me indeed have power. We have power to change the world. And we have power to make a difference socially. As we look into what's happening in the world, we are confronted by the inequalities of power, especially here in South Africa. It's a cause, it's a concern that is deeply troublesome, deeply concerning to those of us, you and me, the church, who are called according to those 4 power principles in bringing liberation and the good news to people. It's an issue and concerns of ideological proportions, of how do you offer freedom to people that are seemingly powerless, to those who have no social capital, those who can't exert control because they have no money or no status or no position in life. But here we see that the equation of ideological structures is even there broken down by these power relations of being encouragers, being comforters, participators, of those who complete the joy. And therefore, exert your power for the greater good. Amen.